Good morning. This budget almost sounds too good to be true. What is the catch?
Well, the catch is whether you believe Scott Morrison's economic forecasts going forwards, whether you believe over the next 10 years, for example, while he's handing out $140 billion worth of tax cuts that really will be highly beneficial to families, whether in fact Australia is going to suffer an economic downturn during that time. Does China hold up? Do commodity prices hold up? Because the big problem about handing out tax cuts is always once you've got them baked in, then you're hard to take them out. And so if the economy falls and the government's income falls, then that can be a fundamental problem. So the real punt here is that the economy holds up for the next decade as it has over the past 27 years.
A lot of thought also on whether there's been enough consideration for future generations. The reality is we're not in surplus yet. Can we really afford to splash the cash?
So, look, this is a really good question, and whether, in fact, the government has gone too early handing out the tax cuts. But, look, let's talk about the reality, and that is that there is an election coming. The government wants to put its best foot forward. It has got an extra $11 billion compared with this time last year to spend, and so as a result, it's set out a plan to hand out tax cuts. As the Treasurer will no doubt say later on this morning, you know, it's your money, it's not the government's money, and so they've basically put themselves with a speed limit on the amount that they can tax the community. If basically there's more money coming in, they will hand it back as tax cuts. Now, that's realistic, there's no doubt, but the real issue still is whether ultimately there is going to be the jobs created that there have been over the past 12 months, because there's no doubt Australia's been in a sweet spot. More company taxes have been paid, commodity prices have improved, oil prices have picked up, and then on top of that, an extra 400,000 jobs created. And do bear in mind that the government receives around half of all of the tax. The revenue it receives each year comes from individual PAYE taxpayers.
And Ross, there is of course that unexpected $35 billion surprise package, the $35 billion surprise windfall. The government could of course pay back more debt if it didn't hand out so many tax cuts. Are they trading lower debt for political gain then?
Well, they say, of course, that they will ultimately pay off debt, around $126 billion over the course of the next 10 years. And this comes down to the individual. How would you prefer this additional money to be spent? Do you want it spent on infrastructure? Do you want it spent on individual tax cuts, company tax cuts? Because one thing to bear in mind about this from a political point of view is that every dollar that the government right now can promise as a tax cut, that the Labor Party can also promise that. But then the Labor Party doesn't want to go ahead with company tax cuts, so they've got more money. They want to change negative gearing rules and capital gains tax rules. So technically, when you see the response to this budget from the Labor Party before the next election, you will see even bigger personal income tax cuts and a promise to get out of that debt much, much sooner.
You talked about external factors. What does happen if China's economic growth slows quicker than expected? Is the government's budget fortune too reliant on the success of China?
I think it is, but there's a few other bits and pieces that have happened. Say, for example, after the global financial crisis, companies lost money, and so as a result, they had huge tax losses. So because they've lost all this money, they haven't had to pay tax for the past 3 or 4 years, 4 or 5 years. Well, that's now ending. So big companies in Australia are now having to pay back taxes. One other small thing in the budget that I spotted, of course, is also this thing about the cash economy. Well, every treasurer, since the beginning of treasurers, has always promised that they'll crack down on the black economy. In this case, though, do remember, if you pay your trader, your builder, $10,000 or more in cash, not only are they breaking the law, but you're breaking the law by giving them that money as well. So there's these types of crackdowns inside this budget that are, if you like, the little secrets inside the budget and ways in which the government will raise more revenue.
All right, always good to get your analysis. Ross Greenwood in Canberra, thank you so much.